cast in the first Ted. He was cast as a waiter at a restaurant where Mark Wahlberg and Mila Kunis were having a date. And so I cannot believe this happened, but it did. And we can talk about it when he comes on. Before the scene started, I found Danny, who was like, nervous, as you described, like thinking about, I got to get this right, whatever. And I told Danny that Seth really wanted the waiter to have a French accent, a thick French accent.
Oh my God.
Which, of course, wasn't true at all.
Why?
And so then they start doing takes of the scene, and Seth is turning around and looking at me and Wellesley like, can you fucking believe this shit?
Oh
no. But then, of course, we told Seth that we're laughing too hard. We're like, we told him to do that. So, he got it right and he nailed it. But that was a fun moment. And
Hilarious.
I'm glad that I did not do that with you. And you never would have bought it for me.
Right.
Danny's much more earnest. Like, he actually sees the good in people. So it's like,
Well, I to turn this to writing, though, which I wanted to do, because supposedly that's the focus of this podcast.
Questionable.
It's just so enlightening as a writer to have to act even in one scene, because I had like one kind of half-page speech in it. And, you start really noticing like, oh God, that's hard to say. It doesn't feel right no matter what I do. That feels like a jarring transition. I will just encourage anyone out there, like, if you...
It's like,
Well, I to turn this to writing, though, which I wanted to do, because supposedly that's the focus of this podcast.
Questionable.
It's just so enlightening as a writer to have to act even in one scene, because I had like one kind of half-page speech in it. And, you start really noticing like, oh God, that's hard to say. That's weird. That doesn't feel right no matter what I do. That feels like a jarring transition. I will just encourage anyone out there, like, if you want to... It's sort of a way of like tap testing your writing. Like if you built a plane and you're walking around the plane, or stress testing your writing, say, is like, film yourself trying to do it.
Yeah.
And see what happens, because it is not what you think it is. I was there for the writing of the scenes, and then when I started doing it, and it's so funny how then after I'm walking my dog today, I'm like, oh, I could. It's like I know how to do the job now that I did it, but the work was only for that day, and now I don't know if I'll ever get to do it again. But it's like, just put me back in now. I can do it.
Yeah.
Well, by the way, you're that teacher now. That's what's cool about it, is if they ever want to do another classroom scene with that funny teacher who goes off the rails, then you're there.
No, but I just want to be an actor now.
Yeah, I know. You should be. Well, I remember we went through this on Dads when Peter Riegert had a heart attack.
Jeez.
I don't know why I'm laughing at that.
It wasn't a heart attack. He had like an
episode.
A
stress episode that it was, we all pictured him not wanting to put on the tighty-whitey underwear that he fought us for and then collapsing in a corner. But Goldie stood in for Peter Riegert for like one or two of our dress rehearsals. And I actually have that great photo of you and Seth Green acting together, which you signed for me. It was like you signed "Stay in School," Goldie, which was hilarious. But you nailed that then, and it's funny because then I feel like, as you said, 10 years ago, you had a different attitude. You had a different attitude about acting, or I think your attitude then was like, these guys are frauds. Anyone can do this.
Well, multicam, as you're doing it, just in front of the audience, is much easier than this sort of technical film acting where they're getting very close on you, then they're turning the camera around, getting very... I mean, you're doing 20 takes of the same lines, and you have to make sure they're not meaningless. And then when you're doing it and you're on them, like, you have to give just as good a performance so they can react to you in a way. And actually, Penny Johnson explained this to me. She said, not because I was doing it wrong, but because she was actually saying, like, I appreciate that you're on not your side, you're still going for it, because she said what ends up happening is if you take off when they're on your back, then your intensity won't match. The person will be responding to a different level of intensity than the one when they were on you, and so everyone will think you were overacting in your scenes, because you were downplaying it and causing the other person to have a lower energy level on their side.
They call that the Shatner conundrum. But that's Goldie. That's so awesome. Congratulations.
For real.
And
can't wait to see it.
So speaking of jarring transitions, Goldie, it's time time to do a jarring transition in to Johnny Jokes.
From Hollywood, now is special guest star Pete Holmes. Here's Johnny.
Here we go. Johnny Carson jokes that kill us every week. All right, let's start off.
We've had 2 weeks, so I'm sure these are even better.
Oh, yeah. Well, don't say that. God damn it. Oh, here we go. So
The best jokes you've ever heard. Here we go.
Let's start off with a soft jab. Some sad news. NBA legend Bill Russell passed away at the age of 88.
He gone!
Yeah, he gone. The 11-time Celtic champion will be laid to rest in San Francisco and Oakland simultaneously.
I get it. He's tall.
He's tall. His family says he's 6 feet under and 7 feet across. All right, this next one is a Goldie style joke. I'm gonna tell this one in the style of Goldie.
Oh.
Oh boy.
So, despite over 20 allegations of sexual misconduct, Cleveland Browns quarterback Deshaun Watson received only a 6-game suspension from an independent arbitrator. Not all players are happy with the decision, adding that they will be protesting during the national anthem by taking a dick. Taking a dick. Thank
Taking
you.
a dick. Taking a dick. I just
here we
heard the
go.
word dick.
Yeah,
You ever
there
tell
you
a joke that has the word dick in it and it doesn't get a laugh?
Thank
The
you.
worst feeling.
I don't need these further deconstruction. Here we go. Here we get into some old-fashioned comedy here. A judge has dismissed a lawsuit accusing Bob Dylan of sexually abusing a minor in the 1960s. Yeah. When reached for comment, a clearly relieved Dylan said, "Zaba ziba hoodoo-wee."
You're the first person to that.
Yeah, I didn't know if anyone knew that he talked about that.
That's French.
All right, Goldie, you're going to love this one. It was reported last week that there is widespread discrimination against homosexuals in the Russian army. Undeterred, some of the victims have created a website to highlight the issue. You can learn more at georgsgeorg.net. That's georg.net.
I made fun of your jokes, but you'll soon see it was like bluffing in poker. I had nothing.
Yeah, second Johnny.
Yes.
The New York Post reports an attractive woman has been luring men to luxury New York City hotels, having sex with them, and then stealing all their belongings. Yeah, it's a new scam cops are calling marriage. Okay. Applebee's is testing a new product in its Alabama locations. A lipstick that's flavored like chicken.
Oh.
Yeah. Early reviews are positive, with men saying that their sister's lips taste delicious.
Oh my God.
Oh God.
Okay.
Not where I was expecting it.
Twists and turns. After taking Paxlovid and recovering, President Biden now has contracted COVID-19 a second time. Yeah. Well, fortunately, doctors say he's doing great. In fact, just this morning, he got up out of bed and fell down.
not a young
Even
guy.
I don't like that. You gotta hit the change.
That would Johnny
young
would have
guy.
told it. Johnny would have told it.
Yeah. Well, remember, these are Carson-style jokes. The band Kiss has announced its farewell tour.
All right.
Frontman Gene Simmons said even though he's 73 and completely exhausted, he couldn't resist the urge to put on the makeup and rip off the fans one last time. Somehow having a witness to these makes them infinitely more humiliating.
Oh, no.
Yeah, no, I agree.
When it's
because
just us.
You heard it. So it's infinitely more humiliating to bomb when there's someone else here. Although, oh, wait a minute, there's no one else here because Pete is having technical difficulties. Pete, oh, okay, he's back. There he is.
I've probably said this on like 12 podcasts now, but I pay an extra, whatever it is, $100
Yeah.
a month to have a dedicated Ethernet connection
Yeah.
to this computer. And still, motherfucking Zoom, I'm guessing, still
Okay.
sucks an ass sometimes. I don't know.
Yeah.
I have a theory about this. It's that hair takes a lot of bandwidth. So you have a
Hilarious.
beautiful head of hair.
Hilarious.
You have trouble streaming your head and face.
Yes.
If it was me, crystal clear.
Crystal and Crystal Light. Well, first of all, Pete, you jumped in so graciously. You didn't even get a fucking proper intro.
Yeah.
I didn't expect one.
Let me do the big drum roll here.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. And now it's 6'5.5". Did I guess right?
That's exactly correct.
Wow.
I've got a knack for that because Kilborn and we got a couple right. Anyway, our guest today, we're very excited. We've been planning this for months.
Yeah.
Our guest, he happened to grow up in the same town as Goldie, which is crazy. I'm sure they'll be talking about that later. He's one of the best comedians out there. His show Crashing on HBO that went for 3 seasons was criminally underrated, and I think the best ever document of what stand-up is actually like. You know how sometimes you watch shows about stand-up and you're like, that's not what it's like? Well, when I watched Crashing, I was like, that is what it's like. He always makes me laugh. He's very generous for being here. He has a way bigger podcast than ours called You Made It Weird. Let's welcome Mr. Pete Holmes. Pete, welcome.
Oh, thank you. You know, I'll tell you to open. Thank you for having me.
Of course.
I'll tell you the my favorite Johnny Carson joke of all time.
Please
I
do.
think about it all the time. Is he goes, you know, you guys have a sign that lights up that says applause. I have one facing me that says feign humility, and that is it's one of the greatest showbiz jokes. Especially if you are a comedian, you know how important it is. I'm not saying to feign humility, but yeah, you know what? I'm going to own it. Sometimes you do feign humility, or you feign pleasure. You feign that you're having a
Yeah.
good time, even
Of
when you're not,
course.
because it's your job. In fact, there was a set that I've been regretting lately, and I'm like, the mistake. Not regretting. Everyone there, I'm sure, loved it. It was like a me issue, but I got off stage and I was like, I didn't have enough fun and I didn't smile enough. So I could use the sign that says like, feign humility would be also for me. Smile. Don't forget to be grateful that they're even there listening to you.
Listen to you. Listen to your like goodness and
No, it's
appreciation of
not.
life.
Here, it's like the problem was I was at Montreal doing like 3-4 shows a day, and that's not really a natural state. I feel super like I'm coming down from it, like an astronaut. You know how the astronauts, they go in a bunker for a few weeks after they
Right.
come back from space. And that's sort of how I feel right now. It's not a natural place to be in that many knife fights. You know what I mean? A knife fight should be every once in a while. You're in an abandoned subway
That's
with
what
your
you
gang.
is that what you could call a stand-up set? Is a knife fight, basically?
It's a very friendly knife fight with toy knives. But
And
like-
laughter.
But they
Well,
can
it's
get
really
real.
interesting that we both did stand up for a while, and do you go by how you felt when you did the set? Like you're always waiting for your internal state to match up to some platonic ideal in your head of like how I should be feeling right now when I'm being funny, and there's this disconnect, this duality that you don't feel, and then you judge the set by that, but then you
Yes.
also say like no one could see that, so what difference does it make?
I'm instantly in love with you. What you just said is exactly
Awesome.
so on the money.
Platonic love. Platonic.
So I think it's bordering. It's bordering. I'm not going to cross the border, but know that I'm on the other side of a very meager fence.
You are wearing a very deep V-neck today. I don't know if that was planned.
Is the video being released?
No, not really.
Okay.
Plunging.
Social media asset.
It is a plunging neckline. But you really just said something that's exactly what I'm going through, and I've been doing stand-up for over 20 years, and I still, every time I take a psychedelic, and this is embarrassing, but in my life, when I would take psychedelics, I would almost always have the same revelation, which is that everybody's having their own experience.
Yes.
And I know that seems so obvious, but when you're having such an extreme experience and no one can tell, I even mean like a low dose, like, but you're just kind of having this very like unitive consciousness moment or whatever it may be. Maybe you're just laughing a lot and feeling ecstasy.
Right.
You look at other people and they just think you're a guy standing at a music festival. And that's always so funny to me is everybody's having their own trip. And as a comedian, and with similar, wounds that comedians often have, where you want to control how people feel, often starts in childhood. The older I get, the more I realize that that's sort of a preposterous endeavor, and I can't even control how I feel. So that's what I love. What you're saying is, I have to tell myself, just because I didn't get the good feeling doesn't mean love and service and comedy wasn't exchanged. Like, you just didn't get high from it. Like, how narcissistic and how selfish is that?
Yeah.
Do you have kids?
It didn't get me off. It's funny that you asked that I have kids. That's what's helping me recalibrate. Is I
Yeah.
can take my daughter to the park and I'm having, maybe I'm tired or there's a million things I need to do, but she's having a great time.
Yes.
This is why I would never knowing comedians, I would never tell them to have kids. But I would say that it has certainly been the solution to a lot of my self-obsession, which is self-obsession. I don't mean to get too lofty, but it's when you think of yourself as a self, as part of a member of a happening called reality, that is the cause of all suffering. So being special is actually very close to being in pain. When it's going your way, you're like, I'm the shiny boy. But shining is defined by their light being directed at you. So by definition, you're separate.
Yes.
But it's getting mixed into the soup is where we
Wow.
all know this.
That's the most profound thing anyone's
I know.
said on
Yeah,
the podcast.
yeah.
That was
This is why we all
amazing.
love
Far.
summer camp. Called reality. That is the cause of all suffering. So being special is actually very close to being in pain. When it's going your way, you're like, this is why I would never knowing comedians, I would never tell them to have kids. But I would say that it has certainly been the solution to a lot of my self-obsession, which is self-obsession. I don't mean to get too lofty, but it's like when you think of yourself as a self, as part of a member of a happening called reality, that is the cause of all suffering. So being special is actually very close to being in pain. When it's going your way, you're like, I'm the shiny boy. But shining is defined by their light being directed at you. So by definition, you're separate. But it's getting mixed into the soup is where we all know this.
That's the most profound thing anyone's
I know.
said on the podcast.
That was
This is why we all
amazing.
love summer camp, why we all
Yes.
love
Really
living in the dorms in college, all of this forced community. And now all we do is go around like a bunch of Daniel Plainviews, amassing wealth and isolating ourselves, even though we have pieces of art like There Will Be Blood that tell us over and over that that's, as David Lee Roth said, it's a tomb with a view. Your mansion is a tomb with a view.
Wow.
Right?
I love
how did
Crazy from the Heat, by the way. I just want to plug that book. If you can read, not the album, the
Oh,
book.
I thought you were just saying you love
No,
Van
the
Halen.
book. David Lee Roth wrote this incredible book that's like insanely good and so much better than you would think it would be.
I believe
was
that.
the first concert I ever went to at the Worcester Centrum was
That's
David Lee Roth's
fucking
Crazy from the Heat
awesome.
tour.
Wow.
Oh,
Amazing.
I thought you were going to say Van Halen.
No, David Lee Roth solo, Crazy from the Heat. He came over the audience on a giant surfboard, and everybody went nuts.
Oh,
Kind
my
of fun.
Yeah.
Remember when cool was cool? That was
Yes.
I talked Val about this all the time. I had another friend that we used to laugh about this all the time. In the 90s, cool was cool. Like riding on a surfboard in a crowd is
was
cool.
cool.
And now, if you're looking like you're trying to be cool, obviously I'm not breaking any new ground here. That's not cool. But in the 90s, Richard Gere leaning on a Corvette in a trench coat with his sunglasses on the tip of his nose going like, you ready to go? Like that was cool. But if someone did that now, you would be like, what were you just sitting here waiting for me to come out? Like, how long have you been here? Like, what is with that trench coat? How clean is that trench coat? But there was a time when just being cool was cool, and now not being cool is
Is
cool.
way cooler.
Like Timothy Chalamet is not trying to be cool. Like all of those guys are just like, oh, was I sexy in Dune? Whoops. You know what I mean?
Right.
But Richard Gere was just like, looking in the mirror, going like, "You're sexy. You're sexy. You're cool. He's going
You're
for
cool.
it.
You
You're
look cool.
You're
You
cool.
look cool in sunglasses. Put them on.
You look cool. Ray-Bans, classic Ray-Bans. Yeah.
Oh, God, those are still cool. IMO, as they say on tech. Those are still cool.
IMO.
So now, Pete, I mentioned this earlier. You grew up in Lexington, Massachusetts.
Yes, I did. Birthplace of the American Revolution.
Exactly.
You're
Shot heard around the
welcome.
world. So
That's right.
one of the other podcast members here today grew up in Lexington, Massachusetts, and that is one Mr. Goldie.
Yeah.
So you have that in common. You have the Yangtze River, that the
Oh
two
my God.
two theater movie theater right there in town.
Well, I worked at that theater. The
So did my
Lexington
brother.
Flex. Yeah, there's
Brother worked
still. I don't think it's still there, but I
Is it?
drew a comic strip of. I still remember it because when you would work there, a lot of old people would come in, and it was very confusing. It's a 2-screen theater, and they would. And this is what the strip is basically.
By the
It's
way,
like-
the screens are the size of TVs.
yeah,
The screens are microscopic.
not even TVs at Ludacris's house, just regular TVs, just like good.
It's like a
TV.
60-inch screen.
I went on my first date at the Lexington Flick. We
Me
saw the
too.
movie. No
Yes,
way.
you've talked
What
about
if it
that,
was
yeah.
the movie Shine?
No, because you're significantly younger than we are.
Yeah,
So
yeah, you are.
Okay.
my first date
Well,
was
maybe you
to-
just didn't start dating until then. Maybe you went on your first date in
that would make
1996.
sense. No,
like did.
I saw the Gods Must Be Crazy with Michelle Newman. And,
wow.
and Michelle's mother hovering in the dark behind us.
Oh wow! Downstairs or upstairs?
Don't remember.
Okay, mine was downstairs.
Yeah, but so wait, you drew a comic strip.
Oh,
somewhere.
okay. So it goes like this. I say like, there's an old person, which I'm sure I drew in a way like Mad Magazine offensive, like old spot marks and
Yep.
like just near death. I don't even know if it would be okay now. And I say, and I'm sure I made myself handsome and great. And I was like, how can I help you? And they say, 2, please. And this would happen every night. And I would say, what movie? And they'd go, seniors. And I'd go, for what movie? And they'd go, 2 seniors. And I think that's where the strip ends, but like, and I go like $14, or it was probably less than that. It was probably like $12.
Yeah.
But that would happen all the time. And you could figure out which movie they were going to. It was,
Oh, of course.
It was
of
the old
course.
person movie.
Yeah, one theater's Highlander 2, and the other one is Remains
Yes.
of the Day. It's like I know where
Yeah.
you're going.
Yeah. You're not here to see the opposite of sex. But that comic strip, I went back and visited. It's funny the things that as a comedian matter. I guess it's just novelty. You're looking for novelty. If you get a certain type of praise, meaning people tell you that they think you're funny, you want something strange. It's almost like Hugh Hefner has to be into something strange sexually.
Yeah.
Because
Right.
I don't mean illegal. I just mean like he's like, put my slippers on your ears, or whatever.
Yeah.
He just, which is basically what a Playboy bunny is. It's like slippers on-
That's true.
But I liked that my comic, like 10 years after I had worked there, was still up in the office. That
Aw.
was a credit.
That's
that I was
awesome.
like. But I think then the next time I was there, that they were like, who? And they thought it was Ike Barinholtz.
I thought you were going to say it was Ike Barinholtz. I thought you were going to say it was designated a historic landmark like the shot heard around the world. There was
Yes.
black underneath
You know,
your comic.
not far from the shot heard around the world.
I
mean,
know.
you could hit it with a frisbee from the Lexington Flick.
You could hit it, as Brody Stevens would say, with a wet Nerf.
Oh my God, a wet nerf.
Did you frequent Wallex?
Wallex, I did. In fact, I have a joke right now about how when I was in junior high, it never occurred to me that girls might have liked me. And every comedian, of course, can relate to that. But like,
Yeah.
now when I look back, I'm like, oh, I really had this thing where I thought girls were like unicorns, or maybe princesses, but really like unicorn is better, like not even human, just like you
Yeah.
could never
Yeah.
get
Possibly
close
not
to,
real.
yeah, not even real, not for you.
Yep.
Meaning, and I also had like I know Woody Allen is a complex person, but that level of neuroses, a Woody Allen level, where I was like, what am I going to do? Like, if I ask them out, like, I don't have a car, like, I don't have money. Like, I had that
Yeah.
comedian
We were
brain.
raised in the same lab. Like, I'm just curious what street you grew up on, because it's insane.
We're
how
cut from the same cloth.
Yeah, how
Yes.
similar.
You guys
Well, you
are-
already ripped a thought right from my heart, not just my head, but from my heart.
this.
So I remember, in fact, I would diagnose that as like the first true comedic thought I had. I don't mean it's funny. I mean it belongs in the mind of a comedian. Is I'd watch Saved by the Bell. There's no Max, the Max. I didn't have the Max. And even if there was the Max, I didn't have money. I couldn't. How are we all going to get there? Are our parents going to drop us at Bertucci's? And we're going to, you know what I mean? Like, and then I really even was like this. What are we going to do? Make out? Like, play it out. Like, where do you think this is going? I swear to you, I had an almost adult level understanding that we were children. I was like, I don't want to kiss another child. I don't want to be kissed. It seems weird. I probably just hadn't really developed.
And that's
you know
and
what
that's
I
where
mean?
that's where you and Woody part ways. All right.
Oh my God, it was right there. It was right there. I know it's a dark joke, but man, we need to laugh at our shadows, right? That is so funny. Anyway, this all comes back to Wall-X, but feel
Wall-X.
free to interrupt.
No, I was gonna say that there was a girl who came over my house to do homework, and then we were in my basement, and she's like, "You seem tense. Can I give you a massage?" And I'm like, "Okay." And then she's like, "Well, you can take off your shirt." And I was like, "Okay." And then she's like sitting on my back massaging me, and I'm thinking, yeah, but I wonder if she likes me, though. I mean, it would probably be really weird if I tried to kiss her. So
Yeah.
I didn't.
Yeah, that is. This whole thing. I don't know how to make this work on stage because it always works in the wrong way. But I declined the first blowjob I was offered because I was like,
Casey at the bat.
I literally said, let's keep things where we're at. And I was like a sophomore in college. It wasn't
Because
like
were
I
you
was-
in your mind like, if she does that, then we're gonna have to be married?
Yeah.
Because she's gonna fall too in love
Wow,
with me, and
you're
then
so-
I don't know if I want this.
It was
that the-
more religious. Like I didn't want to, at that point, I didn't want to do anything except with my wife, and I wasn't going to be an everything but Christian, meaning you have everything, sometimes literally but, like you would do everything, as if that would fool any God worth believing in. So I was trying to keep myself pure. But then like the first time after my divorce, and this made it on Crashing, and it ended up being incredibly timely, but it wasn't, as you guys know, you work in TV, you can't address current events in a show you shot 6 months ago.
Yeah.
But it
It's
just
tough.
so happened that Crashing aired the second season. I'm about to have sex for the first time since my divorce. And in real life, the first time I had sex after my divorce, like you, I was so inexperienced that we were literally, I think we were in our underwear and basically, I don't mean to be crass, but like grinding.
Yeah.
And
Sure.
everything was, you
was
know,
on.
and this person was a little bit older than me, and I felt like she was more experienced than me. Everybody was. I'd only been with one person. And I was like, I still said, "Do you want to have sex?" And she laughed and said, "All signs point to yes." I'll never forget it.
That's a great line.
So we put, I know, she was funny. And she said, "All signs point to yes." And then I think we probably attempted to have sex. It took me so long to actually get there. But anyway,
Oh,
that
that's so
made the
sweet.
show. We put that, it is really sweet. We put that moment in Crashing, and everybody was, not everybody, a half dozen people mentioned to me, like,
That's everyone.
that's everybody, I know, right? That's how the human brain works. My dad will be like, a lot of firefighters have red hats, like red baseball caps. I think it's like their helmets. He saw one firefighter with a red hat, like, and it becomes advice.
Yep.
But a few people mentioned, like in reviews and stuff, like how we were addressing consent. And we were, you know, but we weren't in the way that we couldn't have been doing it in the way they thought we were.
Right. It just happened to time out in a way where everyone was talking about that issue at the moment
Yes.
that it came out. And it was like, here's an example of what to do. Thank you, Pete Holmes.
you
Cheers
Right,
to Pete
right,
Holmes and
right.
Crashing.
Yeah.
Right. But this is what I can't make work as a bit because I often get people agreeing with me in sort of the wrong way, and I don't even know how to say it clearly enough. But there's something about cancel culture that is very familiar to me because it feels like fundamentalism. I'm not calling it fundamentalism. So please, this is not shots fired. I understand accountability. I understand justice. All of that. I'm not trying to give people a pass for horrible behavior. Full stop. End of conversation. I'm just saying it reminds me of when I was growing up, like being constantly afraid that I was going to get got or something. Like, and then I saw that happening in comedy. Was like,
You were going to
am
get
I a
canceled.
dirty boy? Like,
You were going to get canceled by God, basically.
and then I really can't make it work. That's exactly right, Alec. I was like, I grew up being worried that I'd be canceled, and that meant hell. Like, but that was the ultimate. Hell is being ostracized, disconnected, right, from the community, and that is again. I'm not trying to say anybody. I'm not trying to say anything really.
You don't have to. You don't
I just
have
moonwalk away.
You don't have to tiptoe on here because you know how your podcast has lots of listeners. Well, this one has far fewer, so you can just say whatever you want.
Well,
on
you
here,
were
and
one
you're
of the
gonna be
guests that
fine.
helped build that listenership. So
I
your
remember
false
that you-
humility will not
There it
play
is.
here, sir.
Feigned
Yeah,
humility.
what happened to that
Fame.
guy? Where'd he go?
That guy.
Where
back
are
at
you,
some-
Alec? Did you leave L.A.?
I did, and now I mean the Al Pacino thing. They're pulling me back in because we're going back to in-person work actually next week. So I've had a lovely 2+ years here on Cape Cod. You know Cape Cod.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm here in the sea breezes, and Goldie and his family were here for a while. So we had a great time here. But
And we
now
felt
I'm
very
being pulled
welcome
back.
for 80% of our time there.
I'm gonna say the first 80.
Wait, what happened?
No, nothing happened. They were great. You guys were awesome guests.
They clearly wanted us gone, and so we left.
Jesus.
After saying stay
The
as long as you'd
Hollywood
like.
folk?
If someone says stay as long as you'd
Oh, I
like,
can't believe if this is real.
This
if
is
someone
great.
says stay as long as you'd like, don't.
By the way, if somebody invites you to live with them with their whole family, don't go.
Oh,
Wait. Oh,
have
you
I
mean
been back?
Goldie?
No.
Alec
Will I
made
ever
you
be
feel-
back? No.
Yes.
No.
Alec invited you, and for 80% you felt welcome.
He's making that up for comedic
I
effect.
thought you
The
meant
whole
by
trip.
Cape Cod. I thought this was like
Oh, no.
coded. They don't like show business people or something.
Well, no,
no,
Cape
no,
Cod.
no,
every
no.
time I go back to Massachusetts, I feel less and less a part of it, and I almost.
We are like strange
I
brothers.
kind
This
of.
is weird.
I kind of hate it now. Like I went from loving it to now I just kind of don't like it. My mom is still there, so I go back. If she moved out here, I don't know how much I'd ever be back.
We relate. I had to reclaim Boston because let me put it this way. When I talk about Boston, I'm not talking about Boston. I'm talking about a collection of projections from my youth that I
Yes.
impose on Boston.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
actually fear are still hiding behind the Sitco sign, and they swarm on me when I get back. And so I've never been to Boston, I'm also incapable of going to Boston. I know people that go to Boston and they go to the restaurants and they see Fenway and all that stuff. I don't see Fenway. I see strange, vaguely traumatic trips
Right.
to Fenway, and you know what I mean. And that's not even my dad was my parents, but I would go with my dad. My dad was not like hitting me or anything like that. I just mean like I was scared. I was just like a frightened child. It was the fucking 80s at Fenway Park with, and
Yeah.
people are drunk, and I'm a
Yes.
very sensitive person is something that I figured out.
It's all Logan Airport. Boston is all the airport. Everyone's attitudes. Everyone's
I
acting
actually
like they're in a
lived at
giant,
Terminal 7C. Yeah.
Yeah, they're
Oh,
in a
you were one
giant
of the
airport.
7C kids.
Yeah.
that's
Oh,
pretty-
it was a
pretty
nice
fancy.
terminal.
Pretty
We had an
fancy
Albon
over at
Pan.
7.
Yeah, exactly. But
To the good bread.
I've never been there. But then when I would start doing shows there, I used to do an annual show. I actually have a real fondness for this time. I'd do a Thanksgiving show at the Paradise. And that's when I think I maybe did it 4 or 5 times. And when I would do it and I would shit on Boston in front of like 200, 300 people. and they would love it. They were
They
with
love it.
me. And I was like, oh my God, there's a whole generation of these, I'm calling us this, I'm not saying it as an insult, soft, sensitive kids who never feel comfortable driving on Sturo Drive, who don't care about sports. We're the MIT kids. I'm not saying I couldn't go to MIT, but I just mean we're the weirdos that
Right.
belong at the Quaker schools in Cambridge, which I went to, not at Triple O's or, the L Street Tavern or whatever.
Well,
So
but
I thought
Boston-
you went to LHS though. You didn't go to Lexington.
I did, yeah, and that was a big deal for me because that was the beginning. Sorry, I feel like I'm talking too much, but like
Talk
the
more.
first the first decision I made, the first thought I had that I was a comedian was, what are we gonna date? That was my comedy thought. The first decision I made that really, and I sound like an old man, but it set the standard and it set the precedent and the trajectory to do what was necessary to be a comedian, like the work and the places you have to go, was going to Lexington High School. And I don't know what came over me, but I went to a private grade school, K through 8, and then my brother went to a private high school as well, and that was probably what was on offer for me. But at the time, I said, look, I see that the family is often stressed out about money. Again, I don't know how I pieced that together, probably heard some arguments, felt some tension. And and my best friend was going there to LHS. So I, like a little politician or like a little showman, was like, Dad, I'm going to go to Lexington High School with Ern, my best friend, and I'm going to put less strain on the house. Like, who is this?
Right.
What am I, little JFK? I was like,
Right.
I understand that things are tight in the household, and it's time for me to put the burden on my city. Lexington can educate me. It's a fine program, and you, my father, have worked hard enough. I swear I talked like that. Like I was a little worried.
Look, I will go to one of the best school systems in the country if it
Yeah,
will help
I'll
this
take that
family.
hit. I'll take that
Exactly.
hit. By the way, on this podcast, you've now discovered that Bob Dylan and JFK have interesting voices. So we're breaking that info here.
I have a joke, by the way, that would have made a great Family Guy cutaway because it doesn't work in my act.
Let's
but I
hear
go,
it.
this is my impression of Bob Dylan before he had ever performed.
Yeah.
And he's just in his apartment in Greenwich Village, and he's getting ready to go to his first show. Okay, he's like, I got my guitar. Okay, check. I got my music. Got my lyrics. These are great. These are great lyrics. But before I head out, I'm just going to give it a go. It never works. I think it's so funny that the first time he tries, he goes, ah, fuck! It kills me.
That's the. By the way, we're stealing that. We're stealing that for free.
If that was on Family Guy,
You will
I
see
would
that on Family Guy. That's
I
a
would
perfect
pay
Family
you.
Guy joke.
I will
to
pay you.
save that joke on Family Guy. You
That
know,
is very funny.
I always do this to you, Alec, but like my current favorite Family Guy, and has been for years, it's not Every Pizza Place, which I think it was last time we spoke. You know,
That's right.
hello,
That's right. Yeah,
Every pizza place.
Yeah.
You put it on top of the pizza, so it's nice and hot. And you know, it's a great feeling in life when you go on YouTube and you realize you're not the only one obsessed with just that joke, and it has
Yes.
like 28 million views. And you're like,
That's right.
I'm not the only one typing in Family Guy Every Pizza Place. Like, nope, 28 million people wanted to just see that 40 seconds.
Right.
But my favorite is, I think Brian says, like, I can only understand part of what you're saying, like how you only understand the last 3 words Sting ever sings. And he's going, dido da bo di da bo da 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 wooded da the fields of gold. And like it's exactly right, and it doesn't, it's almost a false premise, but it's also not. And then he calls it back and he goes, do ba da bo di bo da bo di da ba ba di di bo do sa bo do bo brand new day. And I was like, I've never wanted to
by the way,
steal a
that-
joke more.
That joke is 100% John Viner, who was not asked to be a part of this podcast, but he did the Sting
Doesn't
voice.
feel necessary to say.
Yeah, we like to highlight that whenever we
an
bring up his
ongoing
name.
thing.
But he does a great Sting. He used to do this very childish thing in his act when he first started, because he knew his Sting impersonation was funny, but he was like a very young comedian, so it's like, how can I use this? And it was like Sting as a rabbi at a bar mitzvah, and he goes, giant checks are what you get when you are a Jew.
Oh my! How did that not make the show? That is so. You know how I'm assuming you do. How it's right on the line. Like there's the line,
Yes.
and Family Guy will take a box cutter and just run down the line,
Yes.
and often go over it. Let's be honest. But that's
Yeah.
talk about novelty. When I'm watching Family Guy, it's almost because I think I love it, and I'm also let's
Out
be
of
honest, you're
options.
watching it to be shocked. You're like, I'm just so tired of
Right, of not being
playing
shocked.
ball. I'm tired of pitches over the plate. I want to see the batter get hit. It's like being honest about NASCAR. I'd like to see a crash, and then like I pause it. I was watching the recent episodes, and I like pause. I have Val come in, and I'm like, look what they did, and I'm like, can we just admit? I don't know why I'm preaching, but like part of the
Preach.
function of art sometimes is to feel like a slice of ham in your shoe. Like we actually want like a strange, maybe offended, maybe disgusted, maybe disturbed. I feel like they understood that, and I'm not trying to defend every joke that's ever been made. I understand.
No.
I get offended. There's things that I'll agree, but everybody has different standards. But like I sort of envy that in the 60s and 70s, I always cite Maria Abramovich, when like you would pay good money to walk into an all-white room and she was there covered in pig's blood, naked, and she'd throw her own shit at you. And you would leave
That's
and
hot.
like would go to like the Olive Tree Cafe and smoke cigarettes and be like, I don't know why, but that reminded me of my mother, and I'd start to cry. Are our dreams
art.
any indication of how this whole fucking thing works? Meaning, when our unconscious wants to get at us, it doesn't play by the rules. It goes like, here's your dad's dick. Here's your dad's dick. And like, as artists, I'm not saying we should put our dad's dicks, but like, and we should have taste and all of that sort of stuff. But like, isn't it funny that we're not making this up? Our dreams are setting a precedent for how to communicate to the parts of our psyches that are hardest to reach. And they're like, it's through image. It's through it's through shock. It's through awe.
Yes.
It's through it's not just from, happy, joy, fun times. It's
Yes.
actually funny to mention Ren and Stimpy, because Ren and Stimpy actually and SpongeBob do a good job of zooming in on a zit and being like, and my daughter loves it. She's 4 and she loves it. I think it's because she's close to the in-between. She's close to the realm of everything where she
Yes.
just was. And I
Right.
think kids resonate with that because they're like, I'm from a place, as we all are, where everything was happening at the same time.
Oh, one of my theories is that like people who are a year and a half old see the dead.
Sure.
Like
I
my
love that
daughter was
theory.
definitely doing some like witchy stuff. My
Yeah.
youngest was definitely in touch with, like, she would just say things about like my dad who died years ago, like things about my dad to me, and I'm like, where are you getting that? And she's like,
Wow.
I just think he loved you, and it's like, what?
Why have you been holding that in your back pocket
know,
on this
it's amazing.
podcast? We've run out of
Yeah.
shit to talk about on like 30.
I was
We could've
waiting
brought
till
that
I did
up.
a solo podcast.
Ah, Jesus Christ.
Bill,
Not
you
with
took
The
the
that.
Sting
Yeah.
guy. With the Sting guy.
You're right.
John
Oh,
Miner.
Viner, yeah.
It's
I would
hilarious.
say we just saw you. We have footage of you getting the idea. This podcast just becomes Alec in a room blowing out candles. And it's massively
By the way,
popular.
he wouldn't be able to do that. The condition of his lungs. The candles would win.
I'm the Nina Blackwood of this podcast.
Are you a smoker?
Well, I'm a vapor now.
Oh, okay.
So I'm much healthier.
I always
but
think
yes, for a while.
it's funny. Do you know? Is this telling tales out of school? Does Seth still
ahead.
smoke?
No, he does. I mean, he occasionally does, but he's always like 10 o'clock on Saturday night, and I'll awkwardly hold a cigarette that shows you I don't smoke regularly.
That's what he does?
No, Seth. Yes.
Yeah.
When Seth would smoke a cigarette, it would be like the German soldier. It's like in between the wrong two fingers, and you're like, oh yeah, you don't
Sweet.
smoke very often.
Oh, I thought he was I always thought he was a famous smoker. Like he loved smoking.
I think that he does it on stage to sort of evoke
Be
that
like
Frank
Sinatra.
Sinatra thing. But
Yeah.
he, you know, I think he used to occasionally, like when he was around other people that smoked, would kind of zelig it through a few cigarettes. But
Yeah.
I don't think that he smokes in any real way.
Okay, because
Yeah.
I love the Orville, and
Yeah, same.
there was an
Nice.
episode.
What don't you love?
I actually hate everything.
Okay.
and people don't know that about me. And
I love it.
it's actually funny going back, Goldie, to what you said about or what we were talking about, inner realities and outer realities. And I'm a great beneficiary of this outer reality that looks like a golden retriever. You know, it's just like I have this happy thing. But my wife knows I want, especially comedy. I just don't want to watch it. I
Yeah.
found, I'll give you an example. I found issue with Only Murders in the Building, which is, by admission, like a perfect show. Like I really watch it and I go these performances are perfect. Even Selena Gomez, who I like to make fun of, because Martin Short is they're just so of their generation. Martin Short is hits his mark and finds
Yes.
his light, and he's like, "There's been a murder in the building."
Yeah.
And Steve was like, "Whoa, we better go look for clues." And then Selena Gomez is like,
Well, she talks like this. Oh my God.
"Yeah," and she's the most popular of the three.
Yeah.
This is
Yeah,
just
by far.
This is just an indication of how out of touch and how much I'm a 43-year-old dad. So, but my criticism of Only Murders, and this is really just to show how insane, or not insane, that's too interesting, but just how hard to please I can be, is it's like a perfect little box of candy. And if that's what you want, is a perfect little box of candy, then that's a great show. But I tend to, I don't know what I'm looking for, but it's
Yeah.
not what the algorithm's churning out, and it's often not like a perfect shave. I kind of want. It's actually, I want the things that I'm most uncomfortable about myself. Like when I'm on stage and I have a little bit of a snap, or I turn on the audience or something, I'll feel guilt about it for a week. But when I watch another comedian do it,
It's
I'll
the
give it a
best.
standing ovation.
It's the best. That's
I'll
why
be
we
like, that
love.
was true. That was true.
That's why.
fucking thank you.
Why we loved Brody, honestly,
Yeah.
as a comic, because he snapped every show, and it was hilarious.
You did snap every show.
Every show.
The perfect Brody Stevens line was he comes out and he says, "I hate you first."
That,
Yes.
that is brilliant. You know what I say to
so
audiences?
great.
I go, "You guys are doing pretty good. You're judging me. I'm judging you." And I love being rough with them, but I don't know what's going on. I had a theory for a while that this is going to sound absurd, but I started lifting weights. You certainly can't tell, but it upped my testosterone, and that's what it does. And I noticed I was behaving differently on stage. And without getting into it, I found that deeply humbling. As much as we think we have personalities, we're really more like cubes of tofu. There's some things that are really in there, but we're interpreting chemical signals. And that's one of the reasons why I actually need Maria Abramovich covered in pig's blood throwing shit at me. I don't really need people that truly love everything and have never looked at someone's face and thought, I don't know why, but I want to punch you. Like that is of service to me. Like a beautiful, kind-looking person, and you just have a flare-up of what Poe called
Right.
the imp of the perverse. You have a perverse drive, because guess what? You are the last in line of millions of years of pretty fucked up and strange evolution, and we put khakis on it and a polo, but you can't get away from the fact that sometimes you're just I want to drop kick a dog off a cliff.
Well,
you don't do it, but
This is so funny that you bring this up, because in preparation for today, I rewatched part of your what was it? Dirty Clean,
Dirty Clean, yeah.
Dirty Clean, your stand-up special from 4 or 5 years ago. And you open with that. God, that joke is so great, and it is so relatable, and it makes me ashamed. And just in the way that you were talking about, you like to watch something that is kind of makes you uncomfortable because it's so real. when you did that whole setup about like, well, you get a baby and people are telling you like, well, don't shake the baby, like that. Don't you don't. And you're thinking, what kind of psychopath? What is this idiot thinking? I'm not going to shake this baby. And you go, the secret is
you're going to want to shake a baby.
Yeah.
But what they don't tell you is you're going to want to shake that baby.
Yes.
And
oh my God, I laughed so hard at that.
I really appreciate that, and I don't mean to go on too much of a tear here, but of what service am I to humanity? This confusing soup. If you don't perform that joke, that you're fully aware. Here, that's actually
you're
I
laying
hope
yourself
this is
out
interesting.
there.
You're putting
It
yourself
is.
out there, but I'm also going to say something weirder. I'm offended by that joke now. Here's why. We have feelings like I understand why people would shake this baby. Let's say that's what you feel as you're on a yoga ball bouncing a newborn. And you go, oh, I see why they said that. Because there's this, like, it's even in the joke, like jostling is okay, but where do you cross the line from a jostle to a shake,
Yes.
Yeah.
This is why there's signs everywhere in the maternity ward. Remember, don't shake the baby, don't shake the baby, don't shake the baby. So that is like one of the rare public admissions. You have a shadow, you have an animal side, you're a primate. You're going to be frustrated. You're not going to be yourself. Talk about being a block of tofu. You're going to have stress hormones. You're going to have fear hormones. And you are going to be stress and fear and all of these things. And don't act on it. Here's a reminder. And here's another reminder.
Yes.
But now that I have a 4-year-old, almost a 4-year-old, she's before next month, I have now become the person that would be, not today, but would be potentially offended by that joke. Meaning, I happened to tape that special when my baby was 4 weeks old, or maybe 10, 12 weeks old. And thank God I did, because when my baby was 2 months old, I never would have told that joke.
Right.
Because
Right.
I'd be like, for shame, that's not funny. Babies get damaged. You shouldn't make a joke about that. But I was delirious enough and sleep deprived enough and honest enough. And again, not to be too self-important, but I think that's all of our jobs, not just comedians. It's everybody's job as a human being to get honest and find the other people that are comfortable with your level of honesty and explore those feelings in a safe way. It's a shame that so many of us have to go to therapy because you have to pay someone to be like, I wanted to shake my baby, when there's a platinum level of friendship that you can get to, and every comedian knows this. There's nothing I couldn't tell Mike Birbiglia that I felt or thought, because he's just going to say me too. And I think my wife is the same way with her girlfriends, but men struggle a little bit more, and so we hire therapists.
Very well said. Well, everything. I mean, listen, that special was great, and that joke is particularly, as I told you, hilarious, made me uncomfortable, but feel just like an explosion of reaction, which I think is what you were kind of talking about. It's like I felt something, which was great.
Yeah.
And you surrounded it, and just to talk about writing for a minute, because I noticed that you surrounded that joke with some very well-written language about the actual moments of falling asleep. I think you called it like falling over the caramel waterfall, or being stirred into an iced tea as sugar. Yeah. And so that's like really nice prose. Like that's a really nice and descriptive way of flowering up your already funny joke. So I guess my question is, as a writer, do you sit down and say like, okay, I have this funny thing, which I'm going to talk about, Shake the Baby, and how you really only care about actually falling asleep. And then do you say to yourself, I really want to write this, like I want to pour some real writing into this, as opposed to just like getting the funny thought out there. It's important to me that it sounds a certain way. Is that something you spend a lot of time on?
I think it's a great question. I'm always hesitant to say this because new comedians, I think, meaning what I did as a new comedian and what I recommend for new comedians. So many people just want to jump to Bill Burr and just write from stage. But now that when I filmed that special, I was about 20 years into stand-up, and you would know, like when I was talking to you guys earlier, right? When cool was cool. That's just in me. It's just an idea that I have, and I know it. You know what I mean? I don't write down funny things anymore. I write down things that I'm like, I know how I feel about this. So much so that if you put me in front of, I was just doing Montreal, there was probably 700, 800 people in the room, and I'm open micing it. But it's because if you know how you feel about it, meaning you're passionate about it, you don't have to sit at the computer. We're in my office right now. I don't sit here and write stand-up. What I do is I record my sets, and I fervently, after my sets, write down things like Caramel Waterfall or Stir into Iced Tea, all of these stuff. But
so from a technical perspective, then, how much of your act is ever written down? Like, you have a set list, presumably, Shaken Baby. Shaken Baby, does that exist in a Word file where it's like, here's a brain dump on Shaken Baby with bullet points? Or is it literally like in your head, memorized, like, I say Caramel Waterfall, I say Iced Tea, I say Shaken Baby, I say... Or are these parts fungible and as you're on stage in the moment going, my brain's hooking up with Iced Tea, that'll go there, Shaken Baby, based on the reaction?
It doesn't really... Okay, so because I'm in at my desk, I just searched my computer for Shake a Baby, which means I'm on a list now. But what came up was 9/29/18 Largo. People focus on the negative with babies. MP3. I don't even know what that is. Falling asleep breastfeeding. I don't even remember having a joke about breastfeeding. So it's like October 5th, Largo, 2018. Falling asleep, best part of sleep. People warn you about kids. Unregulated corporation. So these things exist. My biggest fault as a comedian is there's nothing harder to do than to get myself to listen to my own stand-up and write it down.
That's so true.
So I've said this on my own podcast where I'm like, if you come see me, like, if there's a Thursday show, that's going to be my favorite show, the first show of the weekend. But it's also going to be the show where I'm trying to remember the joke. Mm-hmm. And then Friday, it's just going to be a tighter show. So if you want to see me really being a human being, still doing well, I'm not saying it's a bad show. I said it's my favorite show. But on Friday, there's just like, it's like Morse code. It's like, it's just coming in. Like, I remember the bit. I need one to get going. And that's certainly true for Montreal. And, Montreal, there's all this industry and stuff. You think that would motivate me to listen to it. But you almost get superstitious. You really have to weigh which is more beneficial to you going on stage tonight, which is a daunting and frightening task, no matter how long you've been doing it. Your body does not understand what's happening. It thinks it's in physical danger. It's fight or flight. It's a very strange, adrenalizing, and also wonderful sensation. But you have to weigh on a scale. On one hand, you have listening to my sets and jotting down notes. Okay? That, without a doubt, would be super, super beneficial, because I hate getting off stage and going, I forgot. I know the line I forgot because I won't forget it for months now. I have this joke about pot, but it opens where I go, I don't do a lot of drugs. I'm usually the guy that can't tell when other people are on drugs. I'm the guy who leaves a party and goes, who was that sweaty, confident man? Right? It gets this big line. And I just forgot it. I acted out more, but I go, he was a real go-getter, right? And then it goes in, and it's just so much better with that joke, and I forgot it, and I was mad. And if I had listened to my sets, I wouldn't have forgotten it. But on the other side of the scale, and this is more nuanced and certainly more subtle, how valuable is it to actually believe and have your actions reflect that you are a badass motherfucker that doesn't need to prepare? And I know that sounds insane, but they're sixes to me. They're about the same. If I humble myself and listen to my sets and take down notes, I'm also unconsciously admitting to myself, this is something worthy of preparation. If I go up on stage like the Kool-Aid Man, which is another great Family Guy cutaway, but if I go up like the Kool-Aid Man and go like, fuck you, this is not a job, I am funny, and I am inviting you to join me and co-create with me a show that will never exist again, whether or not and this is the real voice of my confidence. And if I forget a line, that's the show. Like this
Right.
show is the one where I forgot that line, and then I swing back to try and get it, almost like Robin Williams. And now you get to see me flail, and maybe my tail is on fire, and my little bear in an airplane, and even if a joke bombs, my truest, purest white light confidence will say, "That's the show. You're welcome. Deal with that. I'm here to delight you in all sorts of ways you didn't even expect, not just." I'm going to use nerd voice, knowing my lines and not forgetting. But like, when it comes time to tape a special, I think,
You got to learn them.
yeah, but you got to do it a couple weeks out because you don't want to be doing those notes the day of the show. You
No.
you want to look at a document. But anyway, here's the longest answer ever. When I'm really touring and when I will tour again, getting ready to tape the special, I will have a Word document with each thing. And in the most important thing, it might not have every word of it, but it'll have in bold the very important things. Don't forget these things, like a spoonful of sugar being stirred into iced tea. That will
Right.
be in bold, and I'll look at it before I go on stage.
Okay. Well, now, so you dropped in there that you are going to be doing another special. Is that going to be for HBO as well?
Buddy, I sure hope so.
Well, they should, by the way. I think listen, wherever your special lands, it will make a lot of people laugh. But let me talk while we're on that subject.
That wasn't a stressful question for me. You're just talking to somebody who has no idea what's going on in the market.
Yeah, you did seem very stressed there, so I'm gonna move on from that. But
Only I could have a
I've
topless
talked about
massage.
this. I've talked about this before on this podcast. I think Crashing was such a great show. I think you did a fantastic job acting in that, and writing it, and everything about that show to me was because I'm sure you've had this experience when you watch movies and/or TV shows that are about stand-up comedy. They're almost always way off and offensively bad,
Yeah.
especially if you've done stand-up before. You're like, why are these guys in a fucking locker room? It's just like whatever
I
is
didn't
going
even
on.
like Joker. I was like, what is this
Yeah, I know.
lounge?
Yeah, it's all way off. Whereas Crashing, and again, I just rewatched the pilot. So when you first do a set in Crashing, Goldie, it's unbelievable how similar Pete's first set is in Crashing to actual Gladys's.
Oh, I've seen it.
Yeah, even the
I'm
setup
familiar.
looks the same. And just the way that you're telling decent jokes to titters.
Yeah.
It's like you played very well a comic who is not quite there yet with himself, but
Yeah.
clearly has something, inside to say. I want to know, like, did
Thank
you obviously you felt proud of that show, as you should have. I was disappointed when that show was canceled. I'm sure you were. Did they offer any kind of reasoning? Did they say, like, well, it's just not happening and sorry,
Yeah.
kid? Or because I really felt that show was on its way to building towards, like, Emmy buzz kind of stuff.
Oh,
And-
thanks, man. And you'll
I miss
appreciate
it.
this as a writer. By the third
Oh,
season,
now he's frozen on that compliment.
Technical difficulties. Please stand by.
Oh, I love that, JC. Thank you.
guys, dedicated Ethernet line.
Dedicated. All right. So
I
anyway,
mean-
I was just blowing Crashing, and I wanted to
No,
know
I heard all of it.
Your experience in terms of like when that ended, what was the feeling there? I mean, 3 seasons of a show is a huge accomplishment,
At this
especially
point,
in this
that's
day
like
and age.
friggin' bonanza to do 3 seasons.
Yeah. Judd has a very funny stand-up joke where he goes like, everything's so good. And he's like, of course it's good. You only do 10. He's like,
It's
mashed
true,
it
though.
88 a season or whatever it is,
Right.
He has a lot of great bits about TV.
And
He
that's
has a-
Judd Apatow who co-created that with you and
Yes.
directed a lot of it.
Yes.
Yeah.
He has a great bit about like, there's so many things I don't know what to watch. I'm subscribed to like 8 streamers. And he's like, if only there was some way to pay one fee for all of the streamers. And you could just sort of flip around and see what's on. And we could connect it with some sort of cable. And I was like, that is so funny. Anyway, I started to say you'll appreciate this as writers is the 3rd season of Crashing, I think was because I was finally starting to learn to trust the writers. Like Judah Miller was the showrunner, and they had figured out the show. They were doing great work, and it wasn't by any means something somebody told me something. They were like, Jon Stewart rewrites every episode of The Daily Show. I always thought that meant the show was broken, Like I never told anybody that. I was like, shouldn't the writers be putting out perfect drafts that we can just
Right.
do? And my friend Oren, who worked at The Daily Show, was like, John never didn't rewrite it. And Judd actually said to me, the writer's job is to give you something that makes you think of something. And I was like, wow. Not always, and not on every show.
Sure.
There's a lot of word perfect shows, but this show was about my life. So if they said it and it was a little off, I would just twist it a little bit. If it was something I was saying or my mom was saying, of course, I'm going to have to twist it. They don't know how she talks or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
But they really, all of the writers, Greg Fitzsimmons and Jamie Lee and Yoni Weinberg, our great writer's assistant who wrote on the 3rd season. I'm forgetting some people, obviously, but
Of course.
Beth Stelling. Really great, Solomon. Anyway, great writers. I was sitting right here when the show got canceled, and because I wasn't quite, it was a hard show to make, and we had a feeling that the show was gonna, and by hard I don't mean difficult. There's a difference between difficult. Difficult is like no one gets along, and we're always getting notes or whatever. I just mean it was emotionally draining for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I would say this if Judd was in the room. It's an interesting situation when I would joke that I didn't have 00 status. I needed to run it by Judd.
Sure.
Yeah.
And that's just how it is. 00 status, for people who don't know, means you can't kill. You're not allowed to execute. You can't say no, and I can't say hard yes. So
Right.
by the 3rd season, I was a little bit just disheartened by the fact that and in everyone's defense, I never really complained about this. I just accepted it as my fate. And other
Yeah.
people have been like, why didn't you just say something?
Yeah.
But my feeling was it's Judd Apatow. He changed the show in a way that I think he made it successful. I think he made it work. Anytime we came to a crossroads and he voted, his instincts were always more interesting and funnier and more dynamic. But it created a situation where I was beholden to him, as I should be, as I should have been.
What would you have? Can I ask? Like, do you remember any specific of somewhere where you and Judd departed? Because it would seem to me if you were in that situation now that I'm almost 50, my instinct would be, okay. If I were 15 years younger, I would go, Judd is a god. Judd has done so much. Who am I to question the great Judd Apatow? So if he says something, I'll fall in line. Now that I'm almost 50, I would go, Judd was looking for ideas. He didn't have one. He came to me. I had a better idea. I generated this thing. I appreciate his help getting it made. But you know what? I'm the guy who knows, and I'm going to leverage him. And I bet, the way your age lines up with that, I bet you were getting to the beginning of that at the end. And I, by the way, have been railroaded in everything I've ever been involved with. I've never stood up for myself, to my extreme regret. And it's like now, it's like the anger comes pouring out of me. But I'm wondering, like, because I think your show would have been more interesting than Judd Apatow's show, knowing you and knowing him.
That's
Like,
interesting.
I'll just say flat out.
Well, there was a very formative experience when I was a kid, and I was waiting in line to get on a roller coaster somewhere in New England. So it was probably New Hampshire or something.
You had to be tall enough.
I certainly was tall enough. And you know what? That might actually even feed into it, was maybe I was too young, but I was tall enough. And my brother, who is 2 years older than me, would be getting on the ride fearlessly. And I, again, very consciously, like it was yesterday, remember realizing a very sort of duplicitous but socially beneficial revelation, which is, I'm afraid to get on this roller coaster. I know my brother's going to talk me into going on this roller coaster, so I might as well look brave. I might as well pretend to be cool, like Richard Gere, and just keep my mouth shut and just assume that he talked me into it without it happening, and then I'll look cool. So that was like a strange
Wow.
social coping technique that I learned, which is like, if you're afraid or uncomfortable, avoid the confrontation and just sort of mirror and go along with it. I'll give you two examples, one of which will illustrate why I did defer to Judd and why he earned my trust, not just with what he had made, but with what we were making. But then I'll give you a more fun one that he knows I disagree with him on. And I still am I'm not a big regret person, but I do have a little bit like I wish I had dug my heels in, and he knows that. But the good one is the one that shows you why I trusted Jed and still trust Jed was I wrote an episode where Pete is going up at the Boston Comedy Club, which was a really rough place.
Oh, I know.
And all of the comedians said, they said the hard C word. It was normal. Like every other set, someone was saying the hard C word, the hard F word, and I don't mean fuck. Like weird shit. And I don't even mean in a good way or like a cool Lenny Bruce way. A lot of it was just lazy, bad comedy.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying I was brilliant, but I was clean. So I was sticking out.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, so my parents are in town. Let's have them do something that happens on TV but doesn't often really happen in real life. We're going to have them go to see Pete. And I was like, I feel like my character is getting kicked in the balls so much. Let's throw him a bone. His mom will say, you were funny. Like, you did a great job. But there's the horror that she has to sit through Jason, the club owner, talking about whatever, cum gutters or whatever.
Yeah. There's also, as a writer, I would go, another comic comes up after and goes, oh, that's who you want as your audience? Your fucking mom? Great job.
Yeah,
Nice.
exactly. I mean, that's honestly Pete's problem in a nutshell, is that he's still trying to do comedy that his mother, I would even say that his mommy would like.
Right.
Yeah.
And that was something I had to overcome. And I think that's a death that we all have to, not to sound too much like Joseph Campbell, but there is a death. You have to die to your innocence, and you have to be reborn as a grown-up.
Right, like your mom's dead.
Yeah.
Well, we said that on here before. That's like famous advice. Like, right,
Is
like
it? I've never heard it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Right, like your mom's
parents are
dead is brilliant.
Yeah.
I like Anne Lamott. If they wanted us to speak better of them, they should have behaved better.
So yeah, please continue because I feel like we derailed you.
No, you didn't derail.
From an interesting
I'm feeling
story.
clear today, and because I have good levels of anxiety. Or as Mulaney used to call it, free cocaine. Anxiety was our free cocaine. I know with what he's going through, that might not be in the best taste, but this was 20 years
right.
ago.
Again, nobody's
I know.
listening. It's
Okay, I just don't want people to think I'm making fun of his addiction. He did say that to me, and I still think of it.
no. It's a nice.
Okay, my pitch was that she doesn't like Jason and she likes Pete. And honestly, in that case, I'm a little self-serving. You know what I mean? It's when people write movies about their life and they have them say what they wish they had said or whatever.
Right.
And Judge has had a very interesting, he would always turn the screw just not even 10 degrees, but it was always an important 10 degrees. And he said, or your mom didn't like your set and she liked Jason because at least Jason had something to say. And I was like, okay, that's not what would happen. My mom would have said, Petey, sweetie, you're the gift of this place. You're the light of this place. Those other people were just awful. I'm so sorry you have to be here, but at least, my precious boy, you're so talented. And she would have hugged me.
Was your mother Zsa Zsa Gabor?
Yes. Yes. In a sparkly dress with a little too low of a V-neck. But I thought that was right on because entertainment so often comes down to surprise. And now that I know that, like, you would have seen my mom being like, you're a good boy coming. You disagree?
You were right. No, you were right.
I was right?
Emotionally, it's so much more satisfying for someone struggling to finally get their mother to say,
you're in every writer's room I'm in from now
you,
on.
you have my blessing, than this fucking guy who's an ancillary character you don't care about. It's totally unrealistic. Anyone's mom would go for that. So as an audience, you're not going to feel it. Whereas, like,
Interesting.
I was almost welling up when you were telling me about
Yeah.
your mom dragging herself to this filthy fucking neighborhood and telling you, hey, I haven't seen it to this point, and now I'm
Well-
fucking tearing up. You have something.
Yeah.
That's fucking real
Yeah.
emotion that everyone wants to hear that. No one wants
That's-
to watch something and see their mom like some other guy. That's fucking absurd. Fuck you,
you know,
Judd. Get out of here.
You're not going to like it because...
Go back to set. You're not allowed in here.
I always would pitch these moments. Okay, so season 2 opens, season 1 ends where Pete and Allie break up. And that is the relationship that I don't ultimately think works for them, but it's the right relationship for them now. And Pete is now back from the road. He has longer hair because he was just road mode like an assassin. He has a dumb cool guy jacket that he thinks he can pull off because he's been the king of Iowa City. And he goes up at the cellar and he eats shit. He realizes. Is that he has what we call too much road on him. You're not interesting anymore, and he does badly. And that is 100% the story that I pitched and I wrote, and I liked it, and we all wrote, but that was my desire. Right. But I had it that Allie, so Pete's getting kicked in the balls the entire episode. And Goldie, I know you're going to love this because I know your heart now. But at least his girlfriend, his ex-girlfriend, who secretly, they still secretly love each other. I don't know if it's romantic, but they care about each other. She says, whether or not it was a good, I don't think she says it was a good set, but she says something encouraging to him. Yeah. Something beautiful. Yeah. That Pete gets this little breadcrumb that even though New York City will kick you over and over and over and over, at your lowest moment, and this is how I see the universe working, there's an unexpected morsel of love given to you. And that's everyone that starts in comedy knows that anyone that's still doing comedy was lucky enough to get those morsels where you're just cherished for a second, just a second. Someone's tender to you just for a second. Yep. And Judd was on set that day, and he said, or Pete's on tilt, and they have a fight. And that's what we did.
Oh, no. Wow.
And it was hard for me to do. I really wanted, because I love Jamie Lee, who plays Allie. There's real love there. And that's one of the reasons why she and I worked on camera, I think, or I believe, is because we really do love each other. So it's like you would feel this. I was in those scenes. There were two things happening. I was myself making a TV show, not a bad set, but the stress of making a TV show. And there's my actual friend who actually loves me, telling me to hang in there. It's like, art imitating life. But forget that. It's just a hack for acting. I can receive it and have real emotion on camera. And instead it turned into, I don't even remember the fight, but it was really... It was like there was, and again, Judd will not hear this, but it's not just loyalty, and it's not just, I agree with the highest ranking executive in the room, which is a Family Guy joke. It's not just that. Crashing was a real experiment in control, and I made a decision to have a sensei. I made a decision to have a guru. And if you like Zen, you know that stories of Zen are filled with gurus making them do absurd things that they would never want to break them.
Was Artie Lang a part of that? Artie, because I love him from all his Howard Stern, that stuff. I would get to work at Kilborn and stay in my car to finish listening to him. And
you'd be late.
And so I loved those episodes. I loved the way you used him. And I'm not trying to get give me a good Artie story, but I'm wondering, you take that piece of talent on, and then your job is getting that person to camera, and the use of him I thought was great. But it is a test.
I'm glad, Goldie, because here we are. We're back. If it's a scoreboard, we're back one for Judd on your scoreboard, because the pilot I wrote for Crashing, I rewrote it 6 times. It's I was really in my fighting weight for writing. Yeah. And you guys know what that's like when I was invincible.
No.
Barely know it.
But I can still bang out a pilot. I'm very proud. I'm a very fast writer, and I can do it very quickly. But that was a time when not only would I write the pilot quickly, I would rewrite it quickly. So, and it would change completely. And I wrote it 6 times. That means I wrote 6 40-page pilots before we even settled on the one
Wow.
that we sold. And they weren't small changes. They were completely different because I would change the guest, not the guest, but I would change who Pete was crashing with.
Yeah.
And I remember there was one with Hannibal, and he's going to have a 3-way, and Pete's awkwardly ruining it for him. There was one with Amy Schumer, and they girl out, like they lean into feminine energy. You know, he's recently divorced, and Pete realizes that he misses the type of warmth that you get from like sleepover energy.
Right.
I don't even remember what the first one was. There was Kumail probably, but it wasn't until Judd cast Artie. He said it should be Artie.
But that's who it would be in real life. That's the only person who would really put up with that.
Absolutely. And it was the only salty enough to my sweet. It was the right amount of damage. Judd said the scene in the pizza place is like Pete's talking to the ghost of Christmas future. Like,
Right.
here's a kid that thinks